I am tired and I'm bored. And I moved my chair over because I just got done streaming live a video about being in Red Dead Redemption. Hello everyone, my name is Stonesy Boy, and welcome back to Stonesy Reads. Let's just jump right into it. Get these 20 pages done before I have a panic attack. Shall we? He wasn't minding all those school odors, the chemical smell of the carpet, the dusty smell of chalk, the sweat, the bubble gum, the garlic breath from the day's school lunch. Instead of feeling foreign, it felt familiar. Are you ready, Mick asked, plucking at Devon's sleeve. Devon grinned. Ready. They pushed their way through the double glass doors and both scanned the doorway in a bright red dolly truck. Kelsey had been right. They couldn't miss it. They headed toward it and met up with Kelsey as he trotted over the gym. You're there. You're here. Kelsey sounded genuinely pleased. Devon was surprised. Kelsey raised his hand and waved it to the bearded man behind the wheel of the truck. The man waved back, smiling. Devon wondered what it was like to have an adult male smiling at you. No, seriously, let's tell the truth here. He wondered what it would be like to have an adult say like a dad around, period. The only memory he had of his dad was an angry man who threw things at his mom. Devon was 3 when his dad took off. He and his mom had been alone ever since. Kelsey led Devon and Mick to the pickup. Devon noticed a few kids gave Mick and him looks like they were cavemen who escaped the Stone Age. A paper airplane sailed by Devon's head, barely missed his nose. He didn't bother to turn to see where it came from. He kept his gaze at the massive red pickup truck. Hey, George, Kelsey said when he reached the truck. He and George did an elaborate finger flutter into the shoulder bump. This is Devon, Kelsey nodded at Devon and Mick. Nice to meet you, sir. Mick stretched out his hand and dropped the books to tuck under his arm. Before Devon could reach for them, Kelsey bent down to pick them up. But George, who looked to be fit 60-something, shook Mick's hand. No need for the sir. Call me George. He turned to Devon and offered his hand. Devon shook it, and it was thick and calloused. Hiya, George. Kelsey stacked Mick's books and handed them to Mick. Mick shifted them and grinned. Thanks. Okay, George said. How about... Hey, Kelsey, Heather's voice rang out. Devon whirled to look at her. He was wearing a tight red shirt today. He'd spent most of English staring at it, and he was happy to see it again now. Heather ignored his stare, but Gabriella gave Devon a slightly ill look designed to make him feel like a worm. He made an ugly face at her, and he clutched Quincy, who pulled her close and said to George, Nice rig. Thanks, George grinned and patted the hood of his pickup like it was a dog. I've got a 6.2 62-liter V8 under the hood here. 420 horsepower and 460 pound of torque. Whoa, Quincy said. Sweet. He leaned against the front of the truck like he was posing for an ad. Gabriella giggled and posed next to them. Devon's jaw clenched. Quincy and Gabriella were the prettiest people in the school. Gabriella was Hispanic, and she might actually someday get to be a star, and told everyone that she was going to be. She was that beautiful. Quincy, dark-haired but with lighter skin, he had a bad boy look. Devon had once tried to pull off slicking lashes into his jeans, tearing at his t-shirts and slouching more. He didn't work for Devon. All he got was a lecture from his mom taking care of his stuff and standing up straight. What are you doing this weekend, Kelsey? Heather asked. Kelsey gestured toward Mick and Devon. We're going to go into the building supply stores so we can turn an old workshop into a great hangout spot. Heather flicked a glance at Devon and then smiled at Kelsey. That sounds love. I love DIY. Kelsey smiled. That's cool. Heather laid a hand on Kelsey's arms. You know, I'm a really good designer. I helped my mom do a surprise man cave for my dad. She turned toward her friends. Remember building all those wall-to-wall bookshelves? The 3 girls laughed, poking one another in delight, and it's a private joke. Devon wanted to throw up. Valerie, a very small girl who wore enough makeup for 10 girls, had a nastily voice that turned into a honk when she laughed. And Juliet, tall and slender, had a little girl giggle that made Devon's teeth hurt. Quincy pushed off from the truck. I've got mad hammering skills. Kelsey looked at Quincy with no expression. For a second, then he smiled and said, That's great. Devon didn't think Kelsey would think it would act great. He seemed annoyed, but why? Heather took Kelsey's hand. How about you have a building party this weekend? We can all come help. Kelsey opened his mouth. But before he said anything, George grinned and said, Hey, that sounds great. I can help you set up a barbecue. Heather gestured at the truck. Then let's go get some supplies. Kelsey looked from Heather and her friends to Mick and Devon. Heather went on. Quincy's brother was going to take us home, but he had to see someplace. We could go with you to the supply store, then maybe you can run us home? Sure, George said. Be happy to, but... He looked at the group of them. You're not all going to fit. Heather said, sure we will. There's only 5 of us, plus you and Kelsey. 7 plus me and Kelsey, George said, gesturing at Devon and Mick. Heather glanced at Devon and Mick. He waved a hand in the air. Oh, they can ride in the back. Nope, sorry, George said. That's against the law. From the moment Heather and her crew had shown up, Devon had felt like he was watching a scene unfold from inside the glass cocoon. Like he got what everyone was saying. He could hear a girl's annoying laughter, but it was all muted. Even though they were standing just a few feet from Devon, they felt very, very far. Almost like he was watching them from a movie screen. His other senses seemed to turn off. He could no longer smell the bus exhaust belching at the bus as accelerated away from the school. He could no other feel the clothes on his body and pavement under his feet. Now it felt like fog was rolling through the little cocoon, and it was seeping inside of him, putting his brain in murk that made thinking nearly impossible. Maybe it was why he was surprised he saw Mick step forward and say to Kelsey, I thought just me and Devon were going with you today. Kelsey frowned and looked at everyone. Devon knew the problem. Kelsey was asking himself, should I be a jerk and blow off the 2 losers, or should I ignore the pretty girls? It wasn't going to be a tough choice. Kelsey was holding Heather's hand. George spoke up. How about this? We'll do 2 trips. I'll take some of you kids over there, and then I'll come back for the rest. It's only a 10-minute drive. The wait won't be that long. Kelsey released the pent-up breath. Thanks, George. Heather grinned at Kelsey and pulled him toward the pickup's passenger door. Come on, we can share the front seat. Small enough that we can both fit under the seat belt, she giggled. Kelsey shrugged and let Heather leave him to the front of the pickup. The others piled up in the back of the pickup. Quincy pushed Mick back and squeezed in after another 3 girls. For a second, it looked like George was going to do a protest of the number of kids in the back seat, but it shrugged and got behind the wheel. All 4 doors slammed. George put his window down. I'll be back for you boys. As soon as George started a 62-liter V8, whatever that meant, engine, Devon's cocoon collapsed. He actually felt his ears pop and the air around him seemed to adjust to real space and time again. His senses went in high alert too. The first thing he smelled was grape soda and Mick's Go Cup. When he got a whiff of gasoline in the big red truck that drove away with Devon's short-lived optimism, he knew it was too good to be true. He felt Mick tug at his shirt. Want to sit over there and wait? Mick pointed at the curb and sucked on his straw. He plunked his padded rump in the curb, piled his backpack with extra books next to him. A car full of kids blasted past them. Someone let out a shrill whistle and someone shouted, losers. Devon put back out of the driveway. He turned toward the wood and said, I'm not waiting. I'm going home. Mick pulled his mouth from straw and his upper lip was stained purple. Why? Devon glanced down at Mick. He looked pathetic sitting there with his Go Cup. Devon wanted to snap at him and walk away, but 10 years of friendship and thousands of it together fingered links kept their temper somewhat under control. Seriously? You're asking me why? Mick frowned then nodded. Devon sat down on the curb next to Mick. Do you really think after 30 minutes it will take for George to drive them here to come back for us and then we can go there? We're going to be welcomed into the group? Don't you think it would just be a little bit, I'm being very sarcastic right now in case you're missing it, awkward? Mick had to think about that for several seconds. Devon waited. Finally, Mick sighed. Yeah, I see what you mean. He sniffed and stuffed on the straw. Why did Kelsey do that? Why didn't he have them wait? Again, seriously, you're asking that? Did you not see him make a move on Heather? Mick twisted lips and looked up at the corner of his eyes, watching the replay on a tiny screen up right above. He frowned. I thought she made a move on him. Whatever. He went along when she suggested to share the front seat. Mick thought that over and nodded. True. Devon stood. So what are you coming with me or not? Mick sighed. Yeah, I guess so. He lifted his backpack and Devon picked up Mick's extra stack of books. Does this mean we can't have our clubhouse at Kelsey's house? Mick asked as they started walking toward the woods. Yes, I think that's exactly what this means. Mick felt feeling a little bummed about what happened with Kelsey when he met Devon for their hike on Saturday morning. He tried not to let things bother him too much. If he did, he'd be miserable all the time. He didn't really want to be miserable. Mick wished it wasn't awful. He'd seen much worse, but it wasn't good either. Left over from the town owned by a logging company, the houses in the next neighborhood were small, old, and pretty much identical, except for cars and junk that sat next to him. When Mick and his parents moved into their house, they told Mick it was temporary. He wouldn't have to share a room with his little sister forever, but he was still sharing a room with his little sister Debbie. Something about bearable was only because Debbie, who liked to sew, made a curtain to divide their tiny room. That and the fact that they both had earphones and mostly spent their time reading on the computers and kept them wanting to kill each other. Sometimes Mick envied Devon because Devon had his own room, but he remembered Devon didn't have dad. Not being even a lazy dad who never made enough money. At least Mac had a dad, and his dad loved him. That was better than his own room, I guessed. Mick had his backpack filled with junk food, snacks, sodas, water, and his little camera and an extra sunscreen. Trotted up to the cracked and dusty walk of Devon's faded blue front door. All houses in the neighborhood gray sliding and blue front doors. Some were brighter than others. Mick was almost afraid to knock on the door. What if Devon wasn't there? The way Devon had been acting the night before made Mick wonder. Devon was becoming less and less of the friend Mick was used to. It was like something was nibbling on Devon from the inside. It was eating up his smiles and, well, his personality. Mick blinked at the blue door open. "Hi, Mrs. Marks," he said in his tall, skinny woman with short, amused, dark hair. Miss Marks wore a yellow uniform shirt with dark blue uniform pants. Her brown eyes had circles under them, and their chin lips were pressed together. When she saw Mick, she managed a half smile. "He's almost ready, Mick." Devon appeared behind his mom. Mick noticed the house smelled like oatmeal and lemons. "You boys have fun today," Miss Marks said. Devon lifted his backpack and grinned. "We will." Mick almost had a double take. Devon sounded downright enthusiastic about their height. Was the old Devon back? If so, that would be coolio. The waterfall was where Mick's dad had promised it would be. It was jiggy, as he promised. The boys found a big flat rock near the base of the falls, just far enough back to be out of the spray range, but close enough to be harshing froth rolling in the base of the falls. The falls weren't that tall, but they were wide and pretty powerful. It's probably because it was spring and they were fed by the winter snow runoff. Mick loved hearing the water roar as it plunged to the top bluff of his own basin below. The falls were tucked into the sand and the fir trees that enclosed the spaces around the falls. It felt like the boys were in a lush green cave in the distant land. It was pretty magical, Dick thought. He wouldn't have been surprised if squirrels and chipmunks come dancing out of the woods and broke out into song. Of course, he knew that wasn't going to happen, but the falls made it seem possible. Devon's mood made it seem possible, too. Devon had been pumped all morning. He had this, what was it? Swag. It was swag. He's like he was all that. It was loony. Mick had to admit, though, he liked this Devon better than the one that had been making him nervous over the last few days. Yes, Devon was still obsessing over that girl, Heather, but at least he was talking and smiling. Devon stood up and took a picture of the tallest tree beyond the falls. "I'm thinking this would make a great location for a scene in one of Heather's movies," Devon said. "Uh-huh." Mick had no idea what to say when Devon talked about Heather. Pointing out that Heather clearly didn't like Devon didn't mean to any good. So he was using his mom's Nassau mental technique, nod, and smile to make listening noises. Devon took a couple more pictures, and then he sat down and pulled a package of crackers and peanut butter out of his backpack. He nudged Mick. "I have a surprise for you. Did you bring dessert?" Mick had eaten all his packaged cupcakes already, and he was still hungry. Devon laughed. No dessert, sorry, but I did find us a new clubhouse." Mick sat up straight. "Really? Where? This part of the surprise. I didn't..." What Kelsey suggested. "I looked for abandoned places near here, and I found one. I'll take you there on Monday after school." "Why not today?" Devon grinned and sly. That made Mick's breath catch for a second. "It's too far. We have to go east at the railway yard instead of west towards our houses like we usually do." Okay." Why did Mick suddenly feel like Devon was hiding something? He opened his mouth to ask what it was, and then when he closed his mouth, maybe it was a more subtle approach that he needed there. Whatever was going on, Mick had thought it would be smarter to watch and wait instead of meeting it head on. Devon finished his crackers, brushed his crumb off his face, and stood. "Come on, I want to scout more locations for Heather." Mick sighed. "Okay," stuffing empty junk food wrappers into his backpack. Mick said, "You wouldn't rather play a scavenger hunt?" They'd been playing since they were small, and Mick loved it. One of them would pick an object for them to find, and whoever found the closest thing to it would get a junk food reward from the other. That's how they got in most of the treasures they lost when their old clubhouse was torn down. A silver ring became a pop-off tab from a soda can. An airplane became a huge plane-shaped tree branch. A pizza became a flat rock with pepperoni-shaped speckles on it. Devon shrugged. "Okay, we can do that too." Mick grinned and scrambled to his feet. Okay, I'll pick the first object. Let's find a fan. Devon strode ahead. Sure, why not? They took nearly an hour to retrace their steps from the falls and get back to the familiar part of the woods. It took that long because Mick was running all over looking for something like a fan. When he found a big fern fawn, they had decided what it would do until they located something better. It didn't look like they were going to find something better until a crow pooped on Devon's shoulder. Mick saw it happen. They were strolling along the fir-needle-padded forest, and Devon was juggling 3 stones as they went. The crow sat high on a branch above their heads, and it caught it when they approached the tree it was in. Mick had looked at it as they passed beneath it. The crow fickled its tail feathers, a big bright splotch appeared on Devon's shoulder, and his beak was squishy, splatting sound. Mick started laughing, and he inhaled sharply as Devon instantly let loose on the stones he carried, sending it streaking like a missile toward the crow. The stone hit the crow in the stomach, churning quack, and the crow tumbled and seemed in slow motion to the ground. It landed a few feet in front of them. While Mick tried to process what just happened, Devon gestured a clearly dead bird. If you want it, a wing would make a better fan, Devon said. Mick stared at the bird. The forest started to spin around him as he stumbled back, bracing himself on his feet. You okay, Devon asked. Mick's mouth was so dry he couldn't speak. Devon started to stroll away, pulling his shirt off his shirt as he went. Mick dug a bottle of water from his backpack and took a big gulp. I don't need a better fan, Mick said when he found his voice, which didn't sound anything like normal. Devon shrugged. Can I have some of your water to clean my shirt? Mick handed over his water bottle without speaking. He had no idea what to say, or maybe he was afraid to say anything at all. On Monday morning, Kelsey was waiting for Mick and Devon at their lockers. Mick was surprised to be pleased. Maybe they had to hang out at Kelsey's after all. Hi, Kelsey, he said. Hey, Mick. Hey, Devon. Mick wasn't sure what to expect from Devon. He knew Devon was mad at Kelsey. But Devon grinned and smacked Kelsey on the shoulder. Mick noticed Devon was gauze bandage on his hand. But before he could ask about it, Devon said to Kelsey, Dude, do you have a good weekend? Mick's eyebrows fell, rising. Huh? Kelsey's brows went in a notch, too. He squatted at Devon for a second. Then he smiled and said, Look, guys, I'm really sorry about Friday. That was awkward. I wasn't sure what to do. But then when George came back to get you, he said you weren't there. I didn't have your numbers to call you. Not a problem, Devon said. It was Ox. And it wasn't your fault. Ox? Mick had never heard Devon say that before. Kelsey blew out air and turned the smile that worn since he approached her morphed into a full grin. I'm so relieved. I thought you guys would be mad at me. You have every right to be. Devon shook his head. Nah, it's 5 by 5. 5 by 5. Mick felt he was listening to a defective Devon clone. Great, Kelsey nodded at several kids who rushed and waved at him. Then he chuckled and said, We didn't make much progress on the hangout this weekend. Quincy and Gabriel flaked on me, and Kelsey looked around. In all honesty, Heather and her other friends weren't much help, he winked. But I still don't mind having them around, you know? Devon gave Kelsey a closed-lipped smile. Then he said, I know. But that was a muscle twitch in Devon's jawline. Before Mick could answer that question in his head, Devon leaned toward Kelsey. Listen, I found this place, God dang it, why won't this page turn? Oh, it's just stuck together. This abandoned place that, just like you were talking about, we can actually use that as a hangout instead of your place, or we could just take some seriously cool savage for our hangout. Reclaim materials for super creative spaces. This is better than the sci-fi movie McFly made for super creative spaces. He stifled a laugh. Kelsey grinned. Really? You found an abandoned building? That's cool. I've never heard back from my buddy. Are you suggesting that we go some urban exploring? Exactly, Devon said. We can meet after school, out back. It's not far. We can walk to it. Okay, Kelsey gave Devon a fist bump and broke off to go into the first class. Devon glanced at Mick. Apparently seeing something in Mick's face, he said, What? Mick shook his head. Nothing. We still didn't think he could say anything about Devon's strange behavior. Devon wouldn't have been surprised if Kelsey didn't show up after school. He thought Kelsey might suspect something, but nope, apparently he didn't, because he was already waiting behind the school with Mick and Devon to let the thick metal door slam shut behind them. Good, so far out. So, where is this place? Kelsey asked, squinting into the relentlessly bright sun and strolling toward the other boys. It's kind of in the woods. It's a mile east of the trailway yard. Devon said as the boys walked away from the school. How could we've never heard of it? Mick asked. We've both lived here since we were born, he said to Kelsey. But Devon shrugged. Don't know. With Devon and the league, boys carefully picked their way through the railway yard, stepping across the rails behind the stringing lumbering metal freight cars rolling into the tracks. From the far side of the yard, Devon led them into the woods, and they picked up the windowing, uneven trail lined in the rotting moss-covered logs and thick clusters of huckleberry bushes and sallow shrubs. The air was moist and rich with a loamy smell. That made Devon think of rainy days. He liked rainy days for some reason. He liked cloudy days. Mick was see shadows as they walked, mostly about TV shows. Mick was going on about a sci-fi show that followed an apocalyptic society in which people were killed for even the smallest mistakes. That sounds interesting, Kelsey said. Kind of up my alley in an extreme way. What do you mean, Mick said. Kelsey shrugged. Oh, I mean, I like legal shows. Courtroom dramas. I'm going to go to law school so I can be a real judge someday. Real judge? Devon wondered what that meant. You don't want to be a builder like your dad? Devon asked. Nope. I like building things, but I'm kind of keen on justice. That gets that. He says we all need to do what we're passionate about. That's true, Devon thought. About 100 yards before they could reach their destination, the trees thinned, and the sun rays touched their skin. Devon felt it light and hit his face. For just a second, his feet altered. You okay? Kelsey asked. Yeah, I just tripped. As fast as the intruder, the sun retreated. Devon turned off the trail and ducked into a denser, darker part of the woods. The boys followed him. Are we there yet? Kelsey asked, and then laughed. My sister always asks that when we're in the car. Mine too, Mick said. Devon ignored them. They were almost there. He led them to a gnarled spruce. There it was. A stop awaited Kelsey and Mick to catch up. What they did, they heard them suck in their breath in unison. Whoa, Kelsey said. Creeptastic, Mick said. Kelsey laughed. Hunkered in the woods a big low-slung building with a shallow roof line and a small boarded-up windows clung barely to life. Although the building was intact, it sagged and leaned, like it was getting too tired to stay standing, because the bubble-shaped, filthy, and broken skylight bulged in the middle of the top of the building. It looked like it wore a bowler cap. It was hard to tell what color his building was built. Now it was mostly green and black, streaked with mold, mildew, and moss. It has also been consumed by wild blackberry bushes. Aggressive, prickly regiments of the vines flanked and building all sides the boys could see from where they stood. The vines grew low, barely reaching the bottom of the building's few windows as they were thick, compacted together in a barrier that can demand a blood sacrifice to get past. You don't expect us to go through those, do you? Mac asked. Devon asked. Do I look stupid? He laughed harder. Wait, don't answer. His laughs were high-pitched, kind of girly. Mick was looking at them strangely. Come on, Devon said, leading to the boys around the building. That was it, Kelsey said. What was it? Kelsey asked. Devon gestured at a wall they were passing. An old, faded sign hung and threw under the weather-worn face. The sign faded so you could only make a few words. F-A-Z and a P. But next to the letters, an image some kind of round defined the elements. Is that a pizza? Mick asked. I think so, Devon said. I think this is a pizzeria. I love pizza, Mick told Kelsey. Kelsey smiled. Me too. Hey, Mick, pull out your cell phone and see if you can find anything about this place. I'd do it, but I forgot my phone at home. Realized it after lunch. I don't think I'd ever done that before. I feel naked without it. Mick laughed and pulled out his phone. Don't bother, Devon said. There's no cell service around this building. Mick held up his phone and turned in a circle. Well, that's kind of spooky-o. Come on, Devon motioned to the boys to follow him to the opposite side of the building. When his running shoes started making scraping sounds instead of the dull thuds that made him into a forest, Chester at the ground. See? I think this was a parking lot. Yeah, look, Kelsey pointed at the far side of the lot and see a tracking of the tree trunk. Probably once white, it was now gray, and when Devon squinted, he could see letter. Stommers on? Customers only, Kelsey said. Should we be here? Mick asked. Devon glared at him. Why not? Does it look like anyone else cares about this place? Besides, no one ever cared that we hung out at the abandoned gas station. He's got a point, Kelsey said. Well, that's the reading for the day. 25 minutes, which is pretty good, actually, on time. 5 minutes earlier than the last one, at least. Anyways, the lesson I can tell you today is the same one I told you last time. Don't abandon your friends. Even for the hottest girl in school or the hottest guy in school, don't abandon your friends. Also, pick your friends. Or have your friends pick you, I guess. Because you don't know who you can trust. Or at least I don't. Because friends sometimes can be jerks, sometimes can be kind. If they're jerks, you might want to, not be friends with them. But always have friends that can back you up. That's about the lesson I could teach you. And if you're having a hard time, then breathe. And think about your next actions. Because the action they're doing of going into an abandoned pizzeria called Fazbear's Pizzeria is not a good idea. You should never go into abandoned buildings. And I know I'm Mr. Law, I know me, Mr. Law, after literally the next video is probably me fighting aliens or something. But listen, if you see an abandoned building, you might want to, one, talk to parents about it. I know, kind of a stickler move, but, you know, you could die. If a building is literally leaning over as they describe it, as if it is a man slouching or barely able to stand, maybe don't go into it, because that means it's about to collapse. And it's being held up by agriculture. Hasn't been touched by human life. So maybe ask someone about it. Maybe they'll tell you something like, oh, this about it. And then you can go, oh, okay, and know you're safe. Or something like that. Have an escape plan at least. If you're going into somewhere abandoned. Or you can go in there abandoned yourself if you really, really, really trust yourself. Just, you know, watch out. I mean, honestly, the people who watch this are few and far in between because there's no one watches this. And the people who do, well, they don't go outside if they're watching a YouTube video. But if they're watching a YouTube video and reading, maybe they do. I don't know. Anyways, hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.